Good morning. My name is Miss Tori, and I am a Youth Services Clerk at Donald W. Reynolds Library, serving Baxter County. This tutorial video is the second in a six-part series teaching players how to play 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. In this video, I will teach you how to read and understand your character sheet. I recommend that if you have a character sheet that's already been filled in, you go ahead and bring it out, as I will be going through each section of the character sheet and explaining what it all means. If you watched our video on part 1 introducing Dungeons & Dragons, you will remember that a character sheet is simply a way of keeping track of your character's information, and that this character sheet is the one provided in the 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons Player's Handbook. Now, the character sheet is generally filled out during character creation. The character creation is a 9-step process that I will not be going through today. If you ever play a game at the library, we will be creating and giving you pre-created characters and pre-created character sheets. I recommend that if you are playing a game with the DM not at the library, you go through the character creation process with them for your first game. Let's get started on finding out what everything on the character sheet means. First up, we're in the top hand left corner. We have the race. And I'm not talking about races you typically see, but fantasy races. You could be a dwarf, elf, halfling, human, dragonborn, gnome, half-elf, half-orc, tiefling, or something that your dungeon master created. In general, what your race contributes to is many things on your character sheet. Depending on what you pick, it affects what abilities you have and what stats you have. Your class is your vocation, your profession as an adventurer. It defines how your character fights. You can be a barbarian, a bard, a cleric, a druid, a fighter, a monk, a paladin, ranger, rogue, sorcerer, warlock, wizard, or something else that your dungeon master has come up with. Just like race, what you pick affects what abilities and what your stats are. Your level is related to your class. You increase your level by playing the game and earning experience points from your dungeon master. Every time you level, you gain new abilities. These abilities are listed under your class information. Your background is what you did before you became an adventurer. You could have been an acolyte, a charlatan, a criminal, an entertainer, folk hero, guild artisan, hermit, noble, outlander, sailor, soldier, urchin, or something else that you and your DM come up with. Just like race and class, what you pick as your background affects what skills you have and your stats on your character sheet. Your alignment is something that is generally not filled out on your pre-created character sheet, but something you pick out when you get one. Your alignment is your character's morality, good, evil, or neutral, and their attitude toward society, lawful, chaotic, or neutral. If you choose the good alignment, you could be lawful good, which means you will do the right thing as expected by society. You could be neutral good, which means you will help others according to their needs, even if that means breaking the law to do so. Chaotic good means you act as your conscience directs, and you have little regard for the law or others' expectations. If you choose the neutral alignment, you can be lawful neutral. Lawful neutral means that you're not generally out to help people, but you do live according to a law, tradition, or personal code. Neutral means that you just do what seems best at the moment and you avoid taking sides. Chaotic neutral means you value your freedom and you follow your whims. You are generally not going to be able to choose the evil alignment. Evil alignment is generally only something you would choose if you were playing evil characters with your entire party and your dungeon master was playing the good characters. This is more of a description of what the villains would be like. Now we've moved down from the box at the top of your character sheet and over to the side on the right. You have this box over here, and this is where you write your personality traits. Your personality traits are traits that make your character stand out. You're also going to fill in your ideals, your bonds, your flaws. You're basically picking out who your character is going to be in this section. This is another section that you would be choosing and generally wouldn't be filled in on a pre-created character sheet. Right below that is a box where your features and traits go. These are the special capabilities that your character has from their race, class, and background. So you've got a race special ability, a class special ability, and sometimes a background special ability. These might be something like dark vision, which lets you see in the dark. Now we're going to go all the way to the other side of the character sheet and talk about ability scores. Ability scores are a number that defines the magnitude of each ability that a character is capable of performing. They encompass your skills and your innate talent. So what this is a score that is assigned to tell how good of your abilities in each category are. So what are the abilities? D&D uses 6 categories to break up your character's mental and physical abilities. These categories are strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. Strength is your physical power and your athleticism. Dexterity is your agility, your reflexes, your balance. Constitution is your health, stamina, vital force. Intelligence is your ability to recall information and your accuracy of that recall, and also your ability to reason. Wisdom is your perception and your intuition about things. Charisma is your force of personality. Now, the box we were looking at was called the ability score. So you have these 6 categories, and for each category, you have a score of how good your character is at each of these things. 1 would be completely awful. 10 is average, and 20 is the highest you can go as an adventurer. What do the ability scores do? They contribute to your character's appearance during character creation. So when you are deciding what your character looks like, you really need to be looking at your ability score. For example, if your ability score was, say, a 5 in your strength, your character would be really scrawny and weak. Your ability scores also determine your character, or how much you can carry, which is 5 times your strength score. But the most important thing that your ability scores do are they determine your ability modifiers. Now, your ability modifiers are the number right above your ability score. These numbers are what you add to your roll when your character performs an ability check, which is one of the most frequently rolled numbers in the game. So what this number is something that you roll to a dice roll. Here's how you use ability scores to get your ability modifier. There is a table on page 173. So you have your ability score, which you get during character creation. You look at that score and then you determine from that what your ability modifier is. For example, if you had a score of 20, your ability modifier would be +5, which would mean you would add 5 to your dice roll. Now let's move on to another section. This section is the Proficiency Bonus box. A Proficiency Bonus is a modifier you add to your roll when you are competent or skilled in doing something or using something. So when you roll your dice, you roll the dice and you add your ability modifier. If you're good or skilled at something, that is one of those abilities, you also add this bonus number. Directly below your proficiency bonus is your saving throws or save box. Saving throws are rolls you make when you attempt to resist a threat. So when someone attempts to attack you, they have to sometimes tell you that you have to make an ability saving throw. For example, if a lot of magical spells, when they attack you, will ask you to make a wisdom saving throw, which means you roll the dice and add your ability modifier for that particular category. If you have a filled in bubble to the side, it means that you also get to add your proficiency bonus to that number. So that means that you would have a higher chance of resisting an attack made under that sort of category. Skills are directly under your saving throws. Now, skills are a specific aspect of an ability, so they're sort of a subcategory of your abilities. Adventurers that have a higher chance of succeeding at a task if they are proficient in a skill related to that task. The DM will generally specify when a skill is applicable to a test. These are your skills and how they relate to your abilities. So you have strength is your ability, and then a skill you could have that falls under strength is athletics. Dexterity has acrobatics, sleight of hand, and stealth. Intelligence has arcana, history, investigation, nature, and religion. And so on and so forth. The only ability that doesn't have any skill subcategories is your constitution, because your constitution is used for your hit points instead. Right below those boxes is your passive wisdom. The DM will refer to this number when deciding if you notice a hazard or something else before it occurs. So for example, your character is walking along in the forest and your DM asks what's your passive wisdom. This lets you know that they're just trying to figure out if you notice something without having you have to roll dice or give away any clues as to what that something is. Now, directly below your passive wisdom is your other proficiencies box. This has other proficiencies that you can apply your proficiency bonus to. So if you remember that +2, so for example, this box has all armor, shields, and simple weapons. This means that if this character uses any kind of armor or shield, they get the proficiency bonus. They can use those things. And then with simple weapons, if they use a simple weapon, which would be like a mace or an axe, with some of the more basic ones instead of something that's more difficult or takes more training to use, then they also get their proficiency bonus. And there are also tool proficiencies. So sometimes you have to be proficient with a certain tool in order to use it. For example, thieves' tools like lockpicks, you have to be proficient in to use. And you would receive a proficiency bonus when you are using tools you are proficient with. Right underneath that is the languages your character speaks. These are fantasy languages. Common, Dwarvish, Elvish, Halfling. They're mostly based on the races that exist in the world of Dungeons and Dragons. Now we're back in the center and up at the top. Armor class. Armor class is the number that enemies are trying to roll against when they try to hit you. So when an enemy attacks you, they have to roll something called an attack roll. They have to get higher or equal to this number in order to succeed in actually damaging you. Next to that is initiative. Initiative is used to determine who goes first in combat. So when you roll initiative, you roll a d20, and then add your dex modifier, which is the number in the block right there. And that number is used to determine what order everyone goes in battle. Next to that is your speed, or base speed. This is your walking speed. It's measured in feet per round, which means how many feet you can walk in 6 seconds. So in this case, you would be able to go 30 feet in 6 seconds. Your running speed is 2 times your walking speed. Hit points. Hit points, or health points as you might know them in other games, are the number of points worth of damage you can take before you die. Your hit point maximum is the maximum number of hit points you can have at your current level. It's also the maximum number of points you can be healed to. The little section underneath is where you keep track of how many hit points you actually have at that moment. You lose hit points if you take damage from an attack. Temporary hit points are hit points that are extra hit points. They're sort of a buff hit points. They last a limited amount of time usually, and they're usually because of some sort of spell or something like that. They can be greater than your maximum hit points. If you had temporary hit points and you were hit with a weapon attack, generally you'd take from those points first before you started taking from your current hit points. Your hit dice is something that you find under, you get it from your class, and it's the type of dice you roll when you heal without medicine. So you can heal when you rest. So you roll this type of dice during a short rest to add to your points. The number you roll is how many points you get, more you get. Death saves. So if you somehow start your turn at 0 hit points, you are dying. So during each of your turn in combat, to keep from dying, you roll a dice. You are trying to roll 10 or higher. Once you succeed 3 times, you become stable. If you fail 3 times, you actually die. Your attacks and spellcasting box. This is a summary of all of the information you need when you attack an enemy. The upper part of it is where you list your weapons. You put the name of the weapon, the attack bonus, which is the number you add in your attack roll, and then next to that is your damage. This is the dice you roll to determine how much damage you're giving your opponent. You'll also have the type of damage listed next to it. Underneath that, you'll have specific information about a weapon. For example, here you've got a light crossbow, and you know that it's a ranged weapon that requires 2 hands, and that it's a loading weapon. Let's get into the specific terminology. So, a melee weapon is a close distance weapon. A ranged weapon is a long distance weapon. The normal range is the first number in the parentheses. So between 0 and that number, you just make a normal attack roll. You can shoot farther than that. That is called your long range. And when you shoot farther, it gives you have disadvantage on that. So it's harder for you to do. So it means you have to roll the dice twice, and you take the lower roll. Finesse lets you use either your dex or strength mod. So finesse means it's sort of a combination of a melee and a ranged weapon. Light means you can use it for two-handed fighting, so it's light enough that you can use both, that you can have one weapon of it in each hand to fight with. Loading means that it takes time to load this weapon, so you're only going to be able to use it once per 6 seconds when you're fighting in combat. Reach means it's extra long, so it'll usually add 5 feet more outside of your normal range of how close you have to be to hit someone. Special means that it has a special property, and those can vary pretty widely. Thrown means that you can use it not only to maybe stab someone, you can also throw it at them. Two hands means that you can only use this weapon if you're able to use both hands. Versatile means that you can use it with one hand or two. It's just that it's going to do more damage when you're using your two hands. Ammunition, it requires ammunition. For example, a bow, you have to have arrows or it's not very useful. So you also have simple weapons, which has to do with your proficiency. If you remember, we had a simple weapon proficiency on the sheet we were just looking at. And simple weapons require less training. You get a proficiency bonus if under your proficiencies it says you have simple weapons proficiency. Martial are weapons that require more training. An example of a martial weapon might be a scimitar. These are weapons that most people wouldn't be familiar with. You get a proficiency bonus if you use a martial weapon, when you use a martial weapon, if you have a martial weapons proficiency listed somewhere on your character sheet. Now, next, under the box for attacks and spellcasting is your equipment box. This is where you write down what you own, your money, your weapons, your armor, your trinkets. And generally when you start out, you have a starter backpack that has stuff like a bedroll, a mess kit, your food, things like that. To the side, you'll see these little boxes. These are where you write what you specifically have in money. Money in the game of Dungeons and Dragons is in copper pieces, silver pieces, electrum pieces, gold pieces, and platinum. For example, a gold piece is worth 100 copper pieces, so it goes up the farther you go. And that was your entire character sheet. Congratulations, guys, for getting through this entire video. That's it for part 2 of how to play Dungeons and Dragons. Thank you for watching. Part 3 will be a tutorial on the adventuring basics. If you are interested in accessing other programs provided by Baxter County Library, please visit our website, baxlib.org. Happy reading. See you next time.